all walk around with invisible walls. Some of us build them to protect ourselves. Some find themselves locked behind them. I never imagined my journey would take me inside real prison walls. And what I discovered there would transform not just others, but myself. I still remember the first day I entered a prison. I was there to volunteer for a program my professor was leading. But I was terrified. I couldn't fathom the idea of sitting in a room with people convicted of serious crimes. But as we sat there and listened to their introductions, their stories, their mistakes, their fears, I had a strange experience. When I looked into their eyes, I could see the person behind the story. And unexpectedly, I could discern the person from the action. Compassion arose long before judgment. And in that moment, I experienced a quiet resolve to participate in the journey of their transformation. After the session, as I stepped out to use the washroom, I tried to hand my tote bag to a colleague. Before she could take it, one of the convicts stepped forward and said, "Don't worry, Akka, it's safe with me." I hesitated. Everything in my conditioning told me not to trust him. But something in his voice, something soft, almost protective, made me hand it over. And when I returned, the bag was there, untouched. I had walked in with fear. What was reflected back to me was trust. And in that moment, I saw not a criminal, but a human being. Every human being, even those who have committed crimes, carries an innate desire to be trusted again, to belong again, to evolve into a better version of themselves. But society often blocks that possibility. We don't just lock their bodies, we lock their becoming. Over the next 2 years, I witnessed stories that challenged my invisible walls and changed me in ways I am still discovering. Before I continue, a brief note. These stories are real. However, the details have been changed to protect the dignity and privacy of the individuals involved. The humanity in their voices, however, remains exactly the same. The intent is to illuminate the universal human theme of reflection, resilience, and transformation. One afternoon, the boys told me that one of them had attempted suicide the previous day. During lunch, I called him aside. A tall, skinny young man. He kneeled on the wooden floor. I urged him to sit on a chair. He refused. So without thinking, I quietly slid my padded footwear under his knees. The moment I did that, he broke down. Tears flowed uncontrollably, and between sobs, he said, "If only I had this kind of love in my life, I wouldn't be here today." That small gesture, unplanned, instinctive, made him feel seen. Something in him shifted. In the days that followed, he showed up with a softness and optimism that wasn't there before. And in that moment, I saw not a criminal, but a human being. How many people around us are waiting for something as simple as this? To be seen, to be acknowledged, not for our mistakes, but for our humanity. Another day, a man returned from a medical visit at the hospital. During the question and answer hour, he shared what happened that morning. When I was being taken into the hospital with handcuffs, he said, a little girl was watching me. But suddenly, her mother pulled her aside and turned her face away. He paused. Am I such a bad person? He asked, that even seeing me can harm someone? He then told us how his family had stopped visiting him over time. He felt forgotten, discarded. And then he said something I will never forget. He said, Akka, you come here regularly. You teach us, you give us hope. You treat us like human beings. Why can't others do so? What he was really saying was the unsaid. I want to be seen as a human being again. And in that moment, I saw not a criminal, but a human being. Shame, when held with compassion, can become a catalyst for moral clarity, self-reflection, change. On another day, just before lunch, a man stood up, sobbing, struggling to speak. His classmates comforted him till he found his voice again. He said, since the day I entered this prison 6 years ago, the only thought on my mind has been to get bail, so I can take revenge on the person who put me here. Every day, every night, that was the only thought. He paused, trembling. But after your session yesterday, for the first time in 6 years, I wanted something else. I wanted to go home again. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to live a normal life. He had found something really profound, that he too can be more than his rage. And in that moment, I saw not a criminal, but a human being. Freedom is not just the unlocking of prison doors. Freedom is the ability to choose. I will not be bound by my anger. I will not be reduced to my worst moment. On the last day of the program, I returned to a question the boys had asked me on day one. Why does society penalize us for one act and forget the many good things we may have done? I didn't answer then. Instead, I waited. On that day, I wiped the whiteboard clean and quietly drew a single black dot. Then, I did the same on the long wall behind them. What do you see on the board? I asked. A black dot, they said. And on the wall, they walked along the wall, searching and searching and searching until they found it. A realization dawned. The boy who had asked me that question walked up to me and said, I will do so many good things that this one act will diminish in its shadows. The room fell silent, hopeful, resolute. And in that moment, I saw not a criminal, but a human being. One powerful moment of clarity can dismantle years of false narratives and create an opening for growth. We all like to believe that laws alone uphold society. But truly, it is the threads between us, how we see each other, the chances we give, the dignity we extend that holds a society together. Inside those prison walls, something profound was happening. For the first time in years, for many of these boys, they were actually being seen. Not the label, not the crime, but them. A longing runs beneath each of these stories. A longing to be seen, recognized, to belong, to believe that one's life can still move towards the light. And when this longing is met, even briefly, the torn fabric repairs itself. Because when we reduce someone to their worst act, the fabric tears. But when we choose to see the person before the action, the weave strengthens. And perhaps the future we seek, the future not yet written, begins with a simple choice to place humanity back at the center. Compassion and unconditional love are not lofty ideals. They are practical tools for transformation. Tools that rebuild what fear has unraveled. When I look back at my days inside those prison walls, I'm reminded of something very ancient, something every culture once knew. Humanity was always meant to be at the center. Across cultures, across centuries, Ubuntu, Ahimsa, Karuna, Manakitanga, our ancestors knew one simple truth. We become fully human only in relation to one another. And they shared one unwavering belief. A human being is worth saving and restoring. But over time, we built walls. Walls of fear, walls of judgment, walls that separated good from bad, us from them. Walls that made us forget the ancient wisdom that every culture once lived by. Yet, in those smallest of moments, when a man chose forgiveness over revenge, when a boy opened his heart to the touch of compassion, I saw those walls crack. Just enough for humanity to shine through. Just enough for a future to be rewritten. This made me realize, if a life can change inside a prison, a society can change outside one. And therefore, the future we seek begins with a simple choice, placing humanity at the center. Because when we do that, we don't just transform the people we fear or misunderstand, we transform the very blueprint of how we live, lead, and belong to one another. That is how new models of living are born. Not through systems or slogans, but through the quiet courage to dismantle the walls we once built and meet each other again as human beings. Humanity has always been the blueprint. We simply drifted away from it. Returning to it is not idealistic. It is the only path forward. Looking back, I realized there was a quiet process unfolding within me. A shift I hadn't planned, but slowly learned to articulate. A wisdom that revealed itself in hindsight. A process that anyone can practice when we meet somebody we struggle to understand. And when I distill the inner process that helped me challenge and break my invisible walls and place humanity back at the center, it unfolds in 4 quiet shifts. First, I learned to suspend judgment, to challenge my assumptions, to take a breath before deciding who someone is. And in that pause, there created a space for possibility. Second, I learned to separate the person from the action. A human being causing an action is not the same as an action defining a human being. We often collapse the two, almost as if one choice tells the whole story of a life. Third, I checked in with myself about my belief in human potential. Every one of us, at some level, desires to become a better version of ourselves. Enough to remember how often we stumble, how often we rise, and how universal this desire is. Finally, I allowed myself to provide grace. The same grace I have needed, the same grace that allows for emergence. This has been my journey back to placing humanity at the center. And if this can happen inside a prison, it can happen anywhere. Emily Dickinson once wrote, "If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life its aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto its nest again, I shall not live in vain." Let us place humanity back at the center where it truly belongs and author a future from there. Thank you.